All right, let's jump right into this explainer. Welcome to the journey of a perfect paint job. Today, I'm throwing on my foreman's hat to really demystify those professional contractor secrets. You know, the ones that separate a decent, kind of okay room refresh from a truly flawless finish. We're going to break down the exact strategies the pros use so you can tackle your next project with absolute 100% confidence.
So let's just address the elephant in the room right off the bat. Why does your DIY paint job always look, well, DIY? Look, we've all been there, right? You burn a whole weekend grinding away only to end up with those kinda sloppy lines up near the ceiling, accidental roller splatters everywhere, and maybe, worst case scenario, some ruined flooring. It is incredibly frustrating. But listen, I promise you, the insider techniques we're covering in this explainer are going to completely elevate your work. You don't need a decade of experience for this. You really just need to know the rules of the trade.
Here's our project blueprint for today. We're going to start with prep like a pro, move on to the perfect paint order, then mastering the cut-in, secrets to smooth surfaces, and wrap up with fixing common mistakes. All right, Section 1, Prep like a pro, the foundation of a flawless finish. Let's talk contractor math. Seriously, how many times have you found yourself making like 3 extra trips to Lowe's or Home Depot just because you guessed how much paint you needed? We got to stop guessing. Here is the actual formula. First, measure the perimeter of your room in feet and multiply that by the height of the room. That gives you your square footage. Second step, multiply that number by 2, because let's be real, you're always going to do 2 coats. Third, divide that total by 300. Now, why 300? Because 1 gallon of paint reliably covers right around 300 square feet. If you do this math, you'll buy the exact right amount of paint, every single time. No more extra trips.
Now, whatever you do, never skip primer to save time. It is a wildly costly mistake. Paint is a premium product, right? It's expensive. Primer is way, way cheaper. If you're transitioning from a dark color to a light color, throwing down a coat of primer means you won't waste your expensive premium top coat doing 3 or 4 layers just to hide the old color. Our sources highly recommend water-based primers, stuff like Zinsser 123 or Kills. And a huge absolute rule here, avoid smelly, oil-based primers for your standard jobs. They are an absolute nightmare to clean up. Really, only use the oil-based stuff if you're specifically trying to seal in heavy smoke or water stains.
Okay, here is a massive secret weapon for new drywall. It's called the prime check. Basically, this is the process of mixing just a little bit of red or blue chalk line dust right into your beige drywall mud. This gives it a slight color tint. You then use this tinted mud to spot and fill tiny imperfections. This is the time to be your own biggest critic. Run your bare hand over the primed wall to physically feel for any roughness. Shine direct light and offset light on the walls, checking both in the morning and the afternoon. You want to fix those hidden dents right now, because once that final paint goes on, changing the way light bounces around the room, that's going to highlight every single flaw you missed.
Moving on to Section 2, the perfect paint order, top to bottom execution.
Okay, we need to dive into this very rigid order of operations. Step 1, always start with your ceilings. Why? Because you can actually be a bit sloppy. If a little ceiling paint drips onto the unfinished walls, it literally doesn't matter. Step 2, move down to your trim. That means doors, windows, and baseboards. Get those entirely painted and completely dry. Then, Step 3, you finally do the walls. You'll use your brush to cut in the wall color right up against that perfectly dry, finished trim. This specific top-to-bottom order guarantees crisp, clean lines, and honestly, it saves you from constantly trying to touch up accidental bumps. It just gives you so much more mercy.
Now there's a huge debate when it comes to ceilings, sprayer versus brush and roller. Sure, you can rent a sprayer at a hardware store, and yes, a sprayer is absolutely going to give you a flawless, line-free finish. But wait, there is a huge catch here. Sprayers leave a very specific, perfectly smooth texture. If you ever make a mistake on your wall later and, say, accidentally bump the ceiling with a roller, trying to patch that sprayed ceiling with a brush is going to scream, "Hey, I got patched!" It just won't blend at all. That's exactly why sticking to a traditional brush and roller is actually way safer for DIYers. It creates a texture that is vastly easier to touch up down the road.
Oh, and here is a massive pro tip for your trim, a real game changer. If you're doing a renovation where you're putting in new floors, paint your baseboards in a completely different room before you install them. Put all your coats on first. When you finally install them over that beautiful new floor, put your nails right in the middle of the board. That way, your only touch-up work is just patching those tiny nail holes and cutting in the top edge. You're keeping your wet paintbrush completely away from your expensive new flooring. Honestly, that tip is just money in the bank.
All right, Section 3, Mastering the Cut-In, Ditching the Tape.
Prepare yourself for a pretty provocative contractor hot take here. Tape is not your friend. Actually, it's your enemy. Seriously, on new construction or freshly painted trim, paint takes up to 30 full days to completely cure. If you slap painter's tape on your freshly painted baseboards to protect them while you roll the walls, well, when you go to pull that tape off, there's a massive risk it's going to rip the fresh paint right off the drywall or the wood. So instead of relying on tape, the pros rely on actual technique.
That technique is called cutting in. Basically, this is drawing a perfectly sharp paint line entirely by hand right at the borders of a surface without using a single strip of painter's tape. To pull this off, you want to grab a thick 3-inch firm brush, something like a Worcester firm. And here's the trip. You don't hold it way down by the base of the handle like you're gripping a tennis racket. No, you hold it right up near the bristles, almost like a modified pencil. This grip gives your hand maximum absolute physical control over exactly where that paint goes.
So when you're executing these cut-in tactics up against the ceiling, you want to bring the wall paint a full 6 inches down the wall. Why? Because later, when you come in with your big, unwieldy roller, you'll have plenty of clearance. You won't accidentally scrape that wet roller against your nice, clean ceiling. In the corners, you want to brush the paint about 1 inch out on both sides. Again, just giving your roller room to breathe. Now, if you have a textured ceiling where the little bumps come down onto the wall, do not drag your brush horizontally. It'll look awful. You actually have to push and dab the brush up into the texture. Oh, and finally, grab a handy paint pail with a strap to hold your paint while you're up on the ladder. Trust me, it's going to save your wrists.
Moving right along to Section 4, Secrets to Smooth Surfaces, the Art of Patience.
I can't stress this enough, patience is totally mandatory here. Just looking at this curing timeline, it takes about 1 hour for primer or regular wall paint to set up enough that you can start rolling the next section. But if you're painting bare, real wood, you absolutely must wait 24 hours between your primer and your next coat. If you try to rush it, say doing 2 coats in one afternoon, the wood is just going to keep endlessly soaking up the moisture. The next day, it'll literally look like it was never painted at all. Waiting that full 24 hours allows that first layer to truly, deeply seal the surface. And, just as a reminder, the full cure time for paint to harden completely, that takes a full 30 days.
The ultimate rule of paint is beautifully simple. Once it's dry, you sand it. You wait for it to dry completely, then you sand it gently using up to 220 grit sandpaper, either on a little orbital sander or a pole. This step is crucial because it knocks down all those tiny rough bumps and dust particles that inevitably settle into wet paint. Then, step 3 is vital. Take an old, dry, stiff paintbrush and use it as a duster. Sweep all that sanding dust right off your baseboards before you apply the next coat. And then step 4, this is the golden rule, folks. Never, ever, under any circumstances, sand your final coat. All right, bringing it home with Section 5, Fixing Common Mistakes, the Rescue Mission.
Okay, let's hit this rapid-fire troubleshooting guide, because look, mistakes happen to everybody. Problem number 1, drips and runs from just having way too much paint on your brush. The pro fix? Take a razor blade and literally shave the bulk of the dry drip right off. Then, alternate between 110 and 220 grit sandpaper to level it all out perfectly before touching it up. Problem 2, streaks and blotchiness. Now listen, just adding more paint is not going to fix blotches. It usually means your wall wasn't sealed properly. The pro fix here is you have to reprime the area, apply really light coats, and feather the edges with a nearly dry brush just to seamlessly blend it in. And problem 3, accidental sealing smudges. The pro fix: if it's wet, wipe it instantly with a wet rag. If it's already dry, touch it up with a color-matched, ultra-flat sealing paint. That stuff is basically magic. It's designed specifically to hide those tiny imperfections.
Now, if you're pausing for the night, here's a brilliant trick strictly for the weekend warriors out there. You're doing this off the clock, right? You probably aren't going to finish the whole room in one night. Please, do not spend 30 minutes furiously washing your brushes in the sink every single evening. Instead, just lightly dip your brush in the paint to keep it moist and wrap the bristles tight, like really tight, in plastic wrap or a plastic grocery bag. I promise, it'll be perfectly ready for you the next morning. It saves you so much time and avoids a huge unnecessary mess. So, the absolutely crucial point I want you to take away from this is, painting really doesn't have to be some frustrating chore, filled with taped edges that bleed everywhere and drips that ruin your floors. You don't have to live like that. You now have the contractor math to buy exactly what you need, the specific order of operations to give yourself some mercy, and the cut-in techniques to work just like a seasoned pro.
With all these tools and contractor secrets now at your disposal, my final question for you is, what room are you going to transform first? Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and seriously, good luck with your project.